Hello everybody, hope you're all doing very well. Thank you very much for tuning into today's video. We really appreciate the support. If you haven't already, please make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the bell icon, all that good stuff. But without further ado, let's get into the main topic for today's video. So for the main topic for today's video, we're going to be talking about how you might, if you're getting your first aquarium, maybe you're getting a new aquarium, but what is my suggested method for best selecting the type of fish or the specific species or that you want to go for your aquarium. What we're going to do is I'm just going to, as usual, walk around and show you guys the fish and dry goods and all that kind of stuff while I talk over it, because it'll quite frankly be a little bit more interesting for you. So when you're getting a new aquarium, there's a few things that you're going to want to consider before you even get to the stage of going down to the fish shop or wherever you're going to head to actually select what you want. And the first thing and the most important thing I reckon that should be considered when selecting fish is, what is the thing that is going to be the most beneficial, or what are you looking to get out of your aquarium? And there's a lot of variables to that. So for example, maybe you really don't care that much about the fish and you really want to have a big planted tank and you really want to just focus on the plants and like grow the plants nicely and propagate them all and collect all the rare ones and all that, and the fish is kind of incidental. Or maybe you want something like that's like super active, super colorful, fun, easy, especially if you've got like kids or something like that. Or maybe there's, you know, a particular type of behavior that you're really interested in. Maybe you really want something that's going to do a lot of digging or something like that. So that's the first thing I would always suggest. So that will kind of give you a very basic understanding, in that it's going to clearly stop you from looking at some options. Like, for example, if you really want to do plants and you really want your main focus to be plants, then you're probably not going to be looking at, you know, Oscars, for example, or you're not going to be looking at African cichlids or that kind of thing. So you can kind of cross off a few things right off the bat of like, right, that's a terrible idea, that's not going to work, let's move on. So that is probably the first thing that I'd suggest looking at, and the first thing I'd suggest considering. Next, I would think about where you want your aquarium to be. So the reason for that is so you can judge a basic size. I always say don't lock yourself into the size until you've kind of decided what you like. Like maybe you really want to do a cichlid tank, but you've only got 2 foot room for a maximum, like maybe a 2 foot tank or something. And that's fine, but what that's going to mean is, so you're basically going to want to cross off like the extremes of like, yep, we're not going to be able to do a massive tank. Yep, we're not going to be able to do, you know, a real shy fish in a real high traffic area, that kind of thing. And so now I'm going to say we're at the period, or at the point where it's going to be a good idea to go down to the local fish shop. So now that we're at the local fish shop with a very kind of basic idea of what we want, like very basic kind of tank size, very basic kind of idea about the tank and what might be what we want, what might be things that we want to stay away from, that kind of thing. I always recommend using that information to kind of steer ourselves towards what might be suitable, and then just looking around in that space. So maybe we're interested in, you know we want to plant a tank, and so we're going to look around all the kind of community fish and just see what we like the look of and what we don't. And I'd always recommend for this step doing it over the course of like a few different fish shops. Like maybe we go and see 5 different fish shops. Obviously it's going to depend on your area, how many is around and all that, but I wouldn't just limit it to one. Maybe watch some fish store tours for your country or your town or whatever, and just see what's around and what's possible and what's available and all that kind of thing, because then we'll kind of get a good idea. I definitely wouldn't recommend just going, right, we need fish, I'll just see what I can find at this one store, because they might not have anything suitable available that day, or they might have, you know, a limited stock, or there might be this one fish that you're going to really love, but they just sold out of it yesterday, so tough luck. And I mean, that's fine, but you know, we want to make sure this is the coolest tank possible and the best tank that's going to be the coolest for us. So I'd recommend doing that, and maybe doing it a couple times over like a couple weeks or some such, just to kind of ensure that our options are being met and that we're making an informed decision. Then once we've done that, what I would do is go back, kind of not to the drawing board, but take a bit of a look at what sort of tank size and sort of aquascape, and kind of start to form a general plan of how we're going to approach it. Like, maybe it's like, oh, okay, we've decided we really love angelfish, because we're looking at angelfish. I really love angelfish. I definitely want to do an angel tank. So we start looking, yeah, we might want, you know, a 3 or 4 foot tank, you know, 40 gallons plus. Maybe we're going to want, you know, white angels, and we reckon the Dragonstone might look really good with them, and this kind of scape I think will suit the house well, and that kind of thing. And like, form the tank around your one sort of preferred, like, definite fish. So you'll be looking like, what's a suitable tank mate, what aquascape is going to bring the most out of them, what, you know, size tank, all this kind of thing, and really start to build it around there. And then once you've got that plan in sort of solid in your head, that's when you're going to want to start kind of building it out, or actually start going. Like, maybe you'll get the tank first, and then what you're going to do is you're going to start with a I don't know, start like get all the equipment and that, and then fill it up, and then start the cycle, and like start collecting whatever plants and aquascaping materials you're going to want, and then doing, you know, your tweaks and your adjustments, like, oh, maybe this rock needs to go a little bit further that way or whatever, and start building it out like that. And then when you're adding fish, you want to start adding fish, I always say slowly. It does depend, of course. If you're keeping African cichlids, you're not going to be able to add slowly in the same way, and like, maybe, you know, you want to add your angels first, maybe you want to add, you know, some bristlenoses first, like whatever, it depends what you want to do. But start adding fish at a rate that's manageable. Getting into your routine with your maintenance as well, so like, kind of understanding, this is how often I need to do the water changes, this is how often I'm going to need to clean out the filter, and all that kind of thing, and kind of building it up to your crescendo of your finished product. And so once it's kind of finished, then obviously, well, not obviously, actually, I'm going to reword that. So an aquarium should be sort of designed forever and for like a long-term goal in mind, because as fish and like as natural sort of environments, these things do take time to mature to really. So what it might be worth doing is kind of like building up to that, like in your mind, framing it as building up to that, and then once you're there, kind of keeping on like maintaining it at that level of maintenance and at that level sort of what is required, if that makes sense. And I find doing it this way, like being a little bit more calm, not locking yourself into like, okay, I have to get fish today from this one place, thinking about your options and that kind of thing, really does give people a lot more. I find people have a lot more satisfaction once they do that. One of the best parts about the hobby, I've talked about this kind of thing, is that you can sort of like research and like finding things out and like you want to do and all that sort of thing is really kind of one of the main bits that's like really cool for fish keeping, because like you can go all into like, what's the natural environment of this fish, like what sort of things might be compatible with it, what kind of things do I have to keep away from, what do I have to know about, like is there any special feeding requirements for these guys, all that kind of thing. And then really kind of building out your thing, like your whole, not just your tank, but your, I'm going to describe it as your environment, as a sort of a research project. I don't like framing it that way because that tends to alienate people, but that is a possible way of thinking about it in a way where best out of it and where you can kind of maximize your enjoyment. And what you're doing is you're not just selecting the best of the options that are at the fish store one day, but really getting the most. It's like the perfect aquarium for you. Maybe that's, you know, Oscars, maybe that's a little planted tank, maybe it's a giant pond, like who knows. But really just thinking about what's the best option that's going to be the most suitable for you. And I think using this method is probably the best option. I find people like my customers and that who follow these kind of general steps seem to have the most success and the most like long-term enjoyment out of their aquarium. Because when you get, if you get something that's like, I have to get it that day, it'll still be exciting that day, but you're not going to be as into it. Whereas if it's something that's a bit more like, this is awesome, and then like long-term, like really kind of invested in it, you're going to keep finding it awesome, if that makes sense. Like it's going to remain one of those things that's like, you're going to love it as much as you did on your first day. So yeah, I think this really does set you up for long-term enjoyment and getting the most out of the hobby that it has to offer. Because I mean, as we all know, the hobby is awesome and it is fun. So this kind of just maximizes that for each individual person. But yeah, that's kind of all I had to offer today. I hope you guys have found some interest in it, and I hope it gives you guys some value. I hope you enjoy it. If you do use this kind of method or these steps, please let me know how you get on. I'd really love to hear what you guys end up choosing, what kind of environments you end up creating, because I mean, that's one of the most awesome parts about my job, is getting to talk to all you lovely people about your awesome fish tanks. So please let me know, I'd love to hear. But yeah, thank you guys all very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.